Hello people of YouTube, my handle is Lord of Diamonds. In this video, which is admittedly a bit overdue at this point, I'm going to be demonstrating the sort of new Cola Killer Studio Grindstein plugin. Now, this plugin is a software emulation of the hardware Grindstein pedal, which is, I don't want to say a Boss HM2 killer, but sort of like it's meant to be a modern, worthy opponent of the HM2. But the plugin is a bit more than that, as I'm going to be demonstrating. I'm going to be evaluating the plugin and also diving a little bit into the apparent philosophy behind the plugin and how I think it measures up in today's modern metal world. So I'm going to get up off the floor and go over to the desktop and demonstrate this thing. Here we go. All right, here we are live, and I have prepared a little track featuring the Grindstein plugin, which I will play for you now. This is just to demonstrate its capabilities in a mix, and also so that I can have something pre-recorded, so that I can have something to input into the plugin as I twiddle its features in real time and test it. So I'm going to play the track. Here we go. That was the plugin. It's that's pretty much what it sounds like right out of the box. The only thing that I was doing to it is this slight low cut right here to take out the low end rumble frequencies, or mud as they say, and also running an instance of an iGuitar rig just for noise reduction, because I don't like gates. I prefer noise reduction plugins because, especially on palm mutes that ring out for a while, noise reduction catches the noise in those better than gates ever will. So that's why I use noise reduction instead of gates. But anyway, here's the plugin proper. As you can see, it looks very metal, but aesthetics aren't everything. So I'm going to set it back to the default, and we're going to see how it sounds. Already it sounds good. Like this is a very usable tone already, but there are tons and tons of options here for tweaking. There's these tabs down at the bottom along with the in and out adjustments, so you can adjust the input and the output if need be. But this first one is the Schnauze, which is German for snout, by the way. Boost/gate. For some reason, this plugin features both a boost on the Grindstein tab itself and on the Schnauze tab. I personally don't see the need for more than one boost. I guess if you just really, really want to boost something that bad, but like at that point, you'd probably just be introducing tons of noise. Anyway, let me get rid of the gate since I've already got a noise reduction plugin going on, but the intent with this plugin is obviously to be as feature-packed as possible right out of the box, so you could just basically plug and play it, and you don't have to introduce any other stuff into the mix. I introduce other stuff into the mix because of course I do, and I already have workflows that I prefer for certain things. But this is the Grindstein tab, where the actual tone is made. And just like on the pedal, there are two channels. There's the bottom shaker channel, which is controlled by these knobs down here, and there's the grind channel, which is controlled by these knobs up here. And you can blend the two, which I find to be very interesting. Like if you turn it all the way down to the bottom shaker channel, you get a very scooped, almost Pantera-like tone. Oh shit, I shouldn't have played that. I'm probably going to get slammed for copyright. The bottom shaker channel all on its own sounds really scooped, kind of nasty. The controls for this are pretty straightforward. For some reason, there's no mid-range control on the bottom shaker channel. I mean, that's fine. Later on, I'm probably going to make a connection as to why I think that might be. But yeah, controls for the bottom shaker channel are real straightforward. You got the bass knob. Let me solo up the track for the guitar here so that I can playlist and adjust things in real time. Obviously, this isn't a clean plugin. Don't expect to get beautiful, clean sounds from this thing. I think I like it as it is, with the gain right about here, the bass in the middle, and the treble all the way up. Now, on their own, the individual channels don't all sound that great, and, I mean, that's kind of the point of this plugin, because it's supposed to be like a modern metal tone plugin that's a little bit dirtier than most of the other stuff out there. But let's check out the grind channel. So if we turn the mix all the way this way, then what we get is this. So already, this is a more HM2 sounding tone. The controls for this one are a little bit more interesting. That grind knob really boosts those mid-range frequencies aggressively in the way that the HM2 does. So right now, what we've got is something that sounds kind of like an HM2 at this point. It's really got that sort of broken, lo-fi sounding distortion that the HM2 gives you, but it's kind of lacking something, and I feel that's lacking in the bottom end. So now let's mix a little bit of the bottom shaker channel back in there, the more scooped sounding channel, and see what we can do with that. This is sounding pretty good. There's also a boost control over here, which you can turn on or off. Let's just see how it sounds with it off. As I expected, with it on, you get a little bit more mid-range, slightly more pronounced transient. I don't really think I need a boost, so I don't think the boost is adding much in this case, but for some situations it might. Now, what I find really interesting about the channel mixing is that there is an option to flip the phase on one of the channels. Now, doing such a thing generally isn't desirable in a real-world situation, like if you're recording a guitar cabinet and you've got two microphones on the same cabinet. If you flip the phase on one, then you're going to get a very nasty, thin, horribly weak sounding tone with only a fraction of the frequencies that the non-phase flipped version would. But the whole point of this plugin is to sound nasty. So let's flip the phase on the channels and see what happens. Interestingly enough, the phase flipping doesn't seem to be doing much. I guess the frequency spectrums of the two channels are divergent enough to the point where phase flipping really just takes out some of the low end. But I find that this phase flipping effect really kicks in if you turn down the grind knob. And at that point, it just really accents those broken sounding upper mids and high frequencies. Take a listen. So that sounds really nasty. Pretty cool stuff. But I'm going to set it back to that more HM2 sounding tone for the moment. That sounds pretty cool. So now let's go over to the next tab, the EQ tab. The EQ tab features the Fleisch EQ. Naturally, Fleisch is German for flesh or meat. But you have all these very interesting knobs: dozer, cleansing, scoop, chainsaw, and blade. This is a prime example of what I like to call vague guitar tone terminology. Obviously, they made it to fit the imagery and themes of the plugin, but it's a prime example of terms in the guitar world like honky, woody, boxy, fizzy, muddy. Like, what does that stuff even mean? What do these knobs mean? What frequencies are these boosting? It's kind of a trial and error process, and what I've narrowed it down to, dozer is a low boost, around 100 hertz or so, which is about where the low frequencies of a guitar signal lie. You're safe dumping everything below that point generally because it just makes mud, as people say. I'm using vague guitar tone terminology. How about that? So I'm going to demonstrate the dozer real quick. I think I like it right in the middle. Yeah, it just adds a little bit more bottom end massiveness to your sound. Cleansing is a pretty serious scoop around 400 hertz or so. The 400 to 500 hertz region is where frequencies lie that are very detrimental to high gain guitar tones for whatever reason. On pretty much every high gain guitar processing chain I usually do a scoop of around 6 decibels or so right at 450 hertz. And it always improves the guitar tone for whatever reason. I don't know why. It just does. But anyway, if I turn the cleansing knob, so here as I turn the cleansing knob, it sounds more scooped. And also, like, there's this sort of whooshing sounding frequency that disappears. I think I like it slightly below the middle, though, just because a little bit of that whooshing frequency adds character. The scoop is another scoop, but it's slightly higher. I think it's about 600 hertz or so. So this scoop is a more pronounced scoop. This is more of like a mid scoop than shitty frequency scoop. So we've got like this. I don't really like using the scoop in this case. I think the aggressive mid frequencies in this tone are pretty good for its character. The chainsaw knob is an aggressive boost of the frequencies around 1.5K or so, I think. This is the typical region where the chainsaw frequencies that make the HM2 chainsaw sound lie, hence the name of the knob. I mean, you could have just put 1.5K boost on there and it would have made that much more sense. But anyway, this is what that sounds like. more chainsaw than you'll ever need. I think I like that knob all the way down in this case. Blade seems to be a boost of just about everything above 5K. It's a pretty gentle slope, but yeah, this is the knob you turn when you want that extra aggression in the high end as if it wasn't there already. In this case, I think we've got quite a bit of it there already, but let's just turn the knob anyway and see what happens. I think I like that one where it is. And of course, there's input and output knobs if you need those. And you can also turn the entire thing off by just tapping the foot switch thing. And when you do that, the LEDs that make up the pig's eyes go off, which is a kind of cool little graphical design feature. Oh, did I also mention that you can turn the Grindstein itself off? So I guess that's if you just want to use the gate and boost, or just the EQ, or the cabinet section, which I'm going to talk about right now. So here we are over in the cabinet section. You can turn this off and use your own impulse response if you want, or your own cabinet simulator, what have you. But the impulses that come with this plugin are pretty good. I'm assuming they're captures of cabinets that are at Cola Keller Studios. So we've got 7 impulses here. We've got Modern Gore, Modern Disgust, More Gore, Filth and Slime, Bloodpath, Wolverine, and Northwards. Obviously, these 2 are references to famous death metal albums from the 90s that used the HM2 prominently for the guitar sound, although I wouldn't consider Wolverine Blues that much of a death metal album, more like a, let's call it redneck death metal. Yeah, Full of Hell is definitely a redneck death metal song. Let's just go through these impulses and see what these sound like. I'm going to loop a different part of the demo track so we don't have to hear the same riff over and over. Well, at this point, we're just going to hear a different same riff over and over. This one's got a weird sounding mid-range, but that could be cool. This one's got that mid-range soften. It's also got less highs. Sounds very aggressive. This one's just got high frequencies all over the place. This one's basically more gore, but with slightly more highs. This is actually my favorite impulse out of all of them. Again, this one's got a bunch of highs, slightly less than this one. But it's a kind of similar character. This one is pretty similar to Bloodpath and More Gore, except it's got a slightly different mid-range character. The mids appear to have shifted a little bit up to the higher side, I think. And of course, you can turn this entire thing off and use your own impulse response, which I have loaded up here. And of course, you can load in any impulse you want with whatever impulse loader you have instead of the built-in impulses in the plugin itself. But I think one of this plugin's strong points is the fact that it is so feature-packed. Like, it's got a gate, it's got 2 boosts for whatever reason, it's got your tone shaping controls, it's got a built-in equalizer with equalization points that are within the typical cut or boost points for metal guitars. That was very wise to do that. So now we've gone over the plugin and what it's capable of doing, but I did mention that I was going to talk a little bit about the apparent philosophy behind this plugin, so I'm going to do that now. Now, this plugin is being marketed as a dirty modern metal tone box, as well as an HM2 emulator. I'm going to address the HM2 thing first. I really don't think that this thing is that good of an HM2 emulator. The way that I would describe it is a neutered HM2. It's got the general frequency range of an HM2, like it's got that over-the-top mid-range, but the really nasty, almost bit-crushed sounding distortion of the HM2 is not present. It's like
they took the general frequency range of the HM2 and then just took out all the little idiosyncrasies that made it interesting. It's not an HM2 killer. It's not an HM2 emulator. It's not an HM2 replacement. Don't buy this thing thinking that it's going to be that, because it's not. It's basically just a dirtier than usual modern metal tone box. It's got some pretty cool cabinet sounds. I haven't tried turning the Grindstein and EQ sections off completely and just running this thing as an impulse box. That might be interesting. It's almost like this plugin is meant to make your tones sound less than great right out of the box. I have a couple standpoints on this. First, I think it's good because if I'm honest, a lot of those frequencies or characteristics that might sound shitty when you've got the guitars soloed up are going to disappear in a full metal mix with drums and bass. Like if you got a good bass tone and a good drum sound underneath, your average HM2 or HM2-ish sounding tone or just dirty sounding metal tone in general is going to sound pretty good along with that. I mean, just listen to that brief break in Entombed's left-hand path where you can hear the guitars soloed up for a moment. And then you hear them with the full band again, and like it's an entirely different sound. Like they sound really out of control in all respects and over the top on their own, but you drop them into that mix and then it just becomes massive. Just because it sounds dreadful soloed doesn't mean that it couldn't serve a place in a full metal mix. Like, especially if you blended it with something else, like a more polished sound. Now, that's actually something, I can't believe I forgot about this, but I actually recorded a track of a real amp to sort of compare to the Grindstein plugin. So I'm going to play that just with the real amp now. And you can hear how much more polished or how much less chaotic the real amp track sounds than the Grindstein track. The Grindstein has that ridiculously out of control sounding mid-range and high-end. The 6505 sounds more controlled and overall more quote-unquote clean sounding distortion. I really hate using vague guitar tone terminology, but I did not script this video, so I'm really flying by the seat of my pants here.
So to summarize, I think the Grindstein delivers to a point for what it's advertised for. It is capable of creating a sound sort of similar to what an HM2 would, but at the same time, not preserving as many of the idiosyncrasies of the HM2 as, say, a full-on emulator plugin would. The Grindstein is not an HM2 emulator. It is an HM2 competitor, something that offers a sort of similar sound, but not similar at the same time. And I don't think that not similar is a good not similar. I think the Grindstein also delivers in terms of creating a sound that is not similar to what you would typically hear coming out of, say, a 5150 or a rectifier sim with a V30 cabinet impulse tacked onto it, because people haven't been hearing much else than that for the last 20 years or so of heavy metal. They kind of tend to gravitate toward that sound anyway when they're making tones with gear that isn't 6505s or 5150s rectifiers with V30 cabinets. That's a V30 cabinet, by the way. They tend to make their gear sound like they tend to pick speakers and try and make them sound more like a V30. Like the V30 and the 6505/5150 and rectifier, they've basically become the gold standard, and everybody tries to make their stuff sound like that. I think that the Grindstein is successful in introducing a potential for some tonal diversity, but at the same time, like, the Grindstein still sort of has just that one signature sound. It does have the solo bottom shaker channel, which is a tone that's pretty scooped by modern metal standards. That could potentially be used in an interesting way, especially if you do some tweaks with the Fleisch EQ and use some third-party impulses. But it's not as tonally diverse as, say, Native Instruments' guitar rig. and there isn't as much potential for experimentation as there is in Native Instruments Guitar Rig. Where's the plugin that will allow you enough experimentation to crank out a tone that's as distinctive as, say, the tone on Metallica's Master of Puppets and Justice for All, or on Cannibal Corpse's Butchered at Birth? Like, have you ever heard a tone in your life that sounds like the tone on Cannibal Corpse's Butchered at Birth? No, I don't think you have, because people were forced to experiment back then. Like, there was no internet. There was no repository of information on what made the best metal tones. You had to experiment. And that resulted in far more people coming up with sounds that were truly their own. Records used to be defined by their production style. Like, after you hear Cannibal Corpse's Butchered at Birth, like, if you hear that mix anywhere, then you know that it can't be anything else but Butchered at Birth, because no other album really sounds like that, because it is the result of a time when people didn't really know how to produce or mix extreme metal. So again, they were forced to experiment, and that experimentation resulted in a very diverse sonic palette across extreme metal. I honestly really would like to see some of that come back in metal, but the Grindstein, I feel like it's just another standard to set, because if enough people want to sound not generic and they come across this plugin, then everybody's gonna be using the same plugin, and they're all gonna sound like they're using a Grindstein. It's sort of like that, if everybody's unique, nobody's unique kind of thing, you know? The Grindstein's a great plugin, don't get me wrong, it's a great plugin. But I feel like its most prominent shortcomings are, one, its billing as an HM2 competitor, and two, its options for experimentation, which are kind of limited at the moment. Like, give me a plugin that can produce the sounds of the Grindstein, can produce sounds like you hear on old Morrisound death metal records from the 90s, that can produce polished metal tones. Give me a plugin that can do that, but not right out of the box. Give me something that I can experiment with. Give me something that I can drag things around and find out what works for me. Kind of like if I was just in a studio with all the gear in the world, and I was just throwing shit at the wall to see what stuck. Like, give me a plugin that's sort of like that. And that might be something truly great. That might be the next big step in the world of digital guitar tones. All right, I think I've talked enough. I think I've said my piece on the Grindstein. I've certainly demonstrated it enough to show what it is capable of. Obviously, nobody is paying me to make this video. I bought the plugin when it was released, just because I wanted to support Christian Cola, because I like his YouTube channel and what he does. Cola Keller Studio is a pretty good channel for learning how to mix rock and metal music. I highly recommend that you check it out if you're into that kind of stuff. That's my piece on the Grindstein plugin. I hope you enjoyed the video and found something worthwhile in it, even if it was a little lengthy. If you really liked what you saw, then if you would be so kind as to hit the like button down there, subscribe, of course, ding the notification